Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Review. I'm Phil Hargis, and alongside of me is Nate Long. Nate Long, NFL week one is in the books. We've seen the games, and the season is officially underway. What a great way to start the season.
Officially underway, and we want to make sure to invite everybody to reach out to us. We want your questions. We want your comments. We want to be able to respond to our listeners' inquiries. So we have set up a Twitter account. We're stepping into the 21st century.
I still got to figure out what that is, but I'm sure Nate's going to explain it to me.
Well, this is my first Twitter account, so you can reach out to us at Nate FSR TV. That's at Nate FSR TV. And then you can also hit us up on the Facebook page, Phil.
Yes, we have a Facebook page, Fantasy Sports Review. You can just go into Facebook, type in Fantasy Sports Review, and then it'll take you straight to our page. We'd like you to become a fan of ours and ask us questions on a weekly basis, and then we'll give you some good answers to help you prepare your lineups for the upcoming weekend.
That's right, and who wouldn't want information from us?
You'd have your question read live on the air. It'd be really exciting. So anyway, I just want to give you guys a quick programming reminder that Fantasy Sports Review and SportsScope can be caught here on Channel 10 in Fairfax County. We air 11:30 on Thursday nights. We air again on the second and fourth Friday at 8:30 p.m., on the second and fourth Saturday at 8 a.m., and then also Sunday, the second and fourth Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Don't forget to catch Fantasy Sports Review and SportsScope. It's great to have the season started here. What a great week. What an exciting week. Let's start off with the quarterbacks.
Oh, man. Quarterbacks. Who would have guessed that Tom Brady came out guns a-blazing with his fist in the air at the NFL?
Yeah, you kind of called that last week. You said he'd have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, a big chip on his shoulder, I think you said, and something to prove. And sure enough, he came out there and did just that.
I think pretty much his whole career, he's carried that sixth-round pick chip on his shoulder. And that's one of the big reasons why he's come out and performed every single week. I knew that he was going to come out again, and he was going to light it up.
And he was on your FanDuel teams as well, so good pick there.
Yeah, he was a good pickup.
But what about Carson Palmer or Marcus Mariota? Where do these guys come from?
Carson Palmer was, a lot of people didn't have high expectations for him, but I figured he'd do well. He definitely has a great receiver arsenal for him out in Arizona. So the biggest surprise for me was Mariota. I mean, I never would have guessed that a rookie quarterback would come out and do as well in the very first NFL game.
And they really throttled back, too, in the second half of that game. He got out to such a big lead that he could have had bigger numbers.
Yeah.
And then Nick Foles, that guy, he can come out. He's no stranger to big games. He's had a lot of them. And in his new situation there in St. Louis, he put on a good performance there. Alex Smith, a little bit of a surprise. He's never really a great high-end fantasy quarterback, but he does have his days sometimes too. And then pretty much the rest of the list is your usual suspects. If you drafted those guys, you're pretty much starting those guys anyway. Let's move on to running backs here. Let's talk about the number one guy, Nate. How about that? Carlos Hyde.
So I guess I got to eat a little crow, huh?
A lot of crow.
Carlos Hyde was one of the guys I just wasn't big on from the start of the season. I didn't think that he was going to do well. I thought that the 49ers offensive line, with having so many changes on their offensive line and having so few starters returning, I didn't expect to see much. But Jim Tomsula has the 49ers playing with some gusto, playing some old school, run the ball type offense. They're taking a lot of pressure off of their QB out there.
And, it's sort of an ideal role for some of these guys. We'll talk about a couple of the other guys here at the top of the list here in a second. But a guy that has been sort of playing in the shadows of another player that's either departed to go to another team or something. These guys have really had a chance to step up. Carlos Hyde was behind Gore all those years, right. And finally Gore got old. Gore got a great opportunity to go to Indianapolis, a Super Bowl contender. And then we have, guys, Bishop Sankey and Chris Ivory. Those guys have been kind of playing in the shadows for at least last year and have had a chance to really step up and make a name for themselves, and boom, there they are, number 3 and number 4 on the list.
I will say this, I was really surprised with the week one totals with tailbacks. There were really only a couple, maybe 3 standouts. Everyone else was just kind of middle of the pack. Only 2 tailbacks rushed for over 100 yards. So that's kind of surprising for me in week one.
That's what the NFL wants, though. They want it to be a pass-happy league, and they've gotten that, and it's kind of made the running back situation almost an afterthought.
Trying to, in Matt Forte, the one thing that's not showing up here is, there's his receiving yards, but he had 5 receptions there. So for a back coming out of the backfield, Mark Ingram also had a number of receptions coming out of the backfield for New Orleans. So that's really where you can kind of differentiate yourself and identifying some of these tailbacks that are going to get quite a few receptions. PPR leagues, you're going to get the extra points for that, and then obviously the yards and the opportunities for touchdowns.
Well, let's talk about Ingram there. That's a surprise to me that he's getting 8 receptions. You expect that from a guy like Fort, and you expect that from a guy like Darren Sproles, but you don't expect that from Mark Ingram, really.
Those are wideout numbers right there. 8 receptions, 98 yards. You do the math. That's 17 points right there.
And not too bad at a little over 10 or 11 yards a clip either.
That's right.
But yeah, and then you got your other guys. Amir Abdullah, a guy that neither one of us really were too excited about. Neither one of us were excited about rookie running backs in the preseason, but he came out and had that big run, and then it's kind of probably pretty much that was it after that.
He really showed how explosive he's going to be, though, in the NFL. And as long as these guys can stay healthy and keep their feet, keep their legs, that explosion is going to pay dividends, and that's what separates backs, is having that type of explosion to get away from tacklers.
And I think that I would favor some of these rookie guys to maybe come on towards the end of the season as well. So maybe if they got off to a slow start, maybe you can get a little bargain on them and trade for them and take a chance that especially depending on their matchups, that they could do well later on in the season. My boy Julio, down in the schoolyard, number 1. I love that guy, and he did not disappoint this week.
Julio, Keenan, usual suspects, Antonio Brown up there at the top of the list.
James Jones, though, he's not a usual suspect, and nor is Stevie Johnson. Where did James Jones come from? Nobody even drafted this guy.
What's that stranger doing up there? Stevie Johnson, though, was a nice surprise out there in San Diego, but James Jones, my goodness.
James Jones, I drafted in one league. I talked about that on the show last week or the week before. I went on tilt because I got Bishop Sankey in the 6th round. I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go on long shots, and I got James Jones. I'm probably one of the only people in all of fantasy that drafted him after that news of him going back to the Packers. But 2 years ago when he was with the Packers, he had the 12, 14 touchdown season, led the NFL. So I'm like, well, if he has that kind of chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, that's the kind of chemistry you want to have with somebody. If you're not going to have chemistry with an Oakland quarterback or with Eli Manning, those are two things. But to have chemistry with Aaron Rodgers is a pretty good guy to have chemistry with. And they brought him back for a reason. If he stunk, they would just bring him back because they have some up-and-coming receivers that they could fool around with. But the Pack want to win now.
Right. Well, the Pack is going to pass. And Aaron Rodgers, he's going to get the ball down the field. He's a big, rangy receiver. So James Jones is a perfect red zone target. And he's proven it over the years.
And for the first time this year, we have a Cleveland Brown making the top 12.
That's right. Travis Benjamin, represent.
I'm sure you're excited about that. Hopefully next week you'll have your Benjamin jersey on if it's not going to be an Isaiah Crowell.
Yeah.
Tight ends, no surprises here. Gronk leads the way. Everybody knew that was coming. And Travis Kelce right at the top.
Right.
And Jason Witten. But Jimmy Graham a little bit further down the list, but some newbies to this list too. Including one guy that you were particularly high on this week, Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
It was kind of a gamble, and honestly, I didn't get to see a whole lot of him playing in the preseason, so I was basing my opinions on a lot of other commentators, and I'm glad that I picked him up for my fantasy leagues, and he definitely paid dividends this weekend.
I think pretty much anybody on this list would be a worthwhile pickup if you didn't draft one of those guys, or if you got to make the list. Then these are all guys that are going to have some sort of value during the course of the year. Look at them, every single one of them except for one of them scored a touchdown, and that was Heath Miller, who just had mega receptions there in that Thursday night game. I mean, that's crazy numbers for tight ends, like something I've never even seen before.
Really, and actually, I was listening to some commentators talking about flex roles, and the day and age is finally here where maybe picking up a tight end for one of those flex roles is something that's realistic.
My understanding was that the guy won the $2 million prize, and DraftKings had 2 tight ends in his lineup for that one.
Yeah, so that's.
I think it was those two, Austin Seferian-Jenkins and Travis Kelce. But there were some big injuries this first week too. I mean, watch out if you drafted some of these studs in the first week of the draft. I mean, what happened?
Man, Dez Bryant.
Dez going down. He looks like I'm not sure, but like his time frame for return looks like he's getting worse and worse to the point where I think he might be gone for the season.
Yeah, it depends on the injury. At first they said 4 weeks, and then next thing I heard it was 8 weeks. So it's never good when the injury line is going that way.
And I just saw a note right before coming in here. They're trying to avoid putting him on the IR for the year. So that's how far that's plummeted. Here in D.C., Deshaun Jackson on one of the first plays of the game pulls up limp with a pretty serious. That's a pretty serious hamstring injury. If if you're hurt and they're already saying you're going to miss 4 weeks, you know that's pretty bad.
Man, Deshaun Jackson, he's just hot or cold, and he's one I've always tried to avoid on my fantasy teams just because he's not reliable in terms of providing points on a week-in, week-out basis. But when he's hot, he's hot.
That's true. And then you have at the running back position, we had Andre Ellington. You know, he was a pretty high pick for a lot of folks this year. Maybe a guy you wanted to kind of expect to make a rebound or bounce back this year, but now it looks like he's going to miss a little bit of time. And then Josh McCown took that little helicopter ride almost into the end zone, but didn't quite make it there.
Well, he made it. The ball didn't make it.
That's right. He did make it. So unfortunately, he came out, and then who came in?
Johnny Manziel.
And how did he look to you?
Well, he looked pretty good for his first couple passes. Was able to get that long touchdown score with Travis Benjamin, but other than that, it just kind of regressed. I didn't think he played horribly. He definitely played better than he did last year when he came out and played that game against Cincinnati, where he looked like he was still drinking on the field. But so he looked a little bit better. Looks like he's been doing his homework, knows the playbook a little bit better. So hopefully coming out, knowing that he's going to start here in week 2, maybe we'll see something.
Maybe he can memorize the entire. Think he can memorize the entire playbook in 1 week?
No.
So there you have it. Tyrod Taylor, though, on the other hand, this is a guy that was pretty exciting.
He was exciting. He's always been the type of quarterback ever since he was at Virginia Tech, where he gets outside of the pocket, he's able to use his legs, and that guy is gone. He definitely has wheels, he has explosion, and he really has a nice arm as well.
And so it looks like he might fit really well into that offense. And then we have a couple of Johnsons there in Arizona. It's anyone's guess who's going to really emerge. I mean, Chris Johnson, come on, you guys, don't pick up Chris Johnson. This guy is terrible. Every single year, he's supposed to be like the breakout player. He has the lead role, and he never does anything. All he can do is get like one long run for the entire season. And then the other times, he's going to get 10 carries for 20 yards, and that's going to be it. So it's going to be easy to shut him down. But David Johnson, on the other hand, showed a little bit of electricity last week.
He's got some pizzazz. I tell you what, those legs are alive. And kind of referring to what you're saying, Chris Johnson coming out the bat, for the next couple weeks, Chris Johnson will probably see more carries than David. But David, wow, that explosion. He turned that corner, and he was gone when he caught that little pass from Carson Palmer.
My friend Jim Kiesling out there in Kansas City, if you're watching the show tonight, he actually asked me this question, on Sunday, like, who should I take, David Johnson or Chris Johnson? I was like, don't even mess with Chris Johnson. Go straight for David Johnson. He'll probably be an easier one to get, and he'll have a lot more value later on in the season, I think.
I agree.
James Jones, I think it's a no-brainer. Everybody knows to go out there and pick him up. What about Cole Beasley in Dallas? Is this guy going to be worth picking up?
Wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3. It's kind of going to be situational. With the injury to Dez, he'll probably see more targets. They like to use him for some of those quick wide receiver screens because he's able to make some moves and get into the open field. But I'm not running to go pick up Cole.
And he made some mistakes on that Sunday night game as well. And
he's always been he's not been real secure with the ball. So that's one of my worries with Cole.
And then we have Austin Seferian-Jenkins here. I mean, he's good. I mean, go back to the tight end sheet. I mean, anybody that was a free agent, David Fells or a Jordan Reed or an Eric Ebron, anyone, or Tyler Eifert, any of those guys, if you can get them on the waiver wire, would be great tight end pickups if you drafted a bum. So let's move on to FanDuel. It was not a good week for me on FanDuel. We'll talk about your team here in a second, but what we've done here is we've compared my team, fantasyreview.com on the left, to the winner of the $1 million prize in FanDuel. So my team was Romo, Blue, Lamar Miller, Julio Jones, Nelson Aguilar, Dez Bryant, Greg Olsen, Brandon McManus, Cleveland Browns. As you can see, it doesn't take any explanation to know that half the team didn't fire at all. Romo ended up saving a pretty good game after a pretty slow first half. But just really, 100 points isn't going to ever win you anything in FanDuel. It was a really bad opening weekend for me. Nelson Aguilar, Nate talked me into picking him. A horrible pick.
Uh-oh.
And then right next to that, the winning team in the $1 million tournament, they had Alex Smith, Jamal Charles, which is an interesting strategy. I don't really like it, but it worked out well for him in this case, having the running back and the quarterback from the same team. Carlos Hyde was obviously a beast. Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, those were the 2 top receivers. Great picks there. Percy Harvin, great sleeper pick there. Tyler Eifert had a great game. And then Hauschka, 49ers. Those are both very solid picks. And we also have a website you can go to. We're going to have a lot more daily fantasy content here. You can go to FanDuelFootballPicks.com and check out for all kinds of awesome information. That site's only going to get better as the year goes on. So go to FanDuelFootballPicks.com and keep up with stuff there during the week. But let's move on to week 2, Nate.
Okay, week 2.
We're going to do it again. You took me down in week 1, but who do you like in week 2 here?
Well, as a quarterback, I think Carson Palmer presents a great value pick. Drew Brees is at the top of the list, depending on what review site that you're looking at. But Carson Palmer sitting down around 8 or 9 in terms of top quarterbacks. I think he's a great value pick. I expect him to put up some good numbers against Chicago, and really like him there. Tailbacks, I think Lamar Miller is set to break out. He had a rough matchup in week 1. Washington Redskins defense is a little bit tougher on the line than what the rest of their defense looks like. But I think Lamar Miller might have a breakout week here in week 2. Obviously, Antonio Brown, Brandon Cooks, I look for him to rebound a little bit. Tyler Lockett is my little surprise. Back in the preseason, I played a FanDuel preseason little matchup, and I picked Tyler Lockett, and I was second guessing myself the whole time, but he returned a kick for a punt for a touchdown in the preseason game. He did another one last week in week 1, so I think that they're really going to try to get him the ball. He's so explosive. They get the ball in his hands. He's a little Percy Harvin.
So, and then Martellus Bennett, and you're like, Martellus Bennett is a tight end that's always great at the start of the season, but he kind of fades and gets banged up towards the end of the season. Danny Woodhead, as long as he's healthy, that's a great value pick because he's still coming off the injury. And you'll see that Nate's lineup here has a defense but not a kicker, and he has a third running back. Well, DraftKings actually uses a different roster format. You actually have the flex position, which is what your Danny Woodhead pick is.
Right. And
they don't use a kicker. I mean, I don't understand. If you don't use a kicker, you probably shouldn't use a defense either, but for some reason, that's why DraftKings does it. I think DraftKings is still stumbling around. I'm trying to figure stuff out. I'm not a big fan of DraftKings, but that's a whole other show, folks. But Nate says he loves DraftKings. You use both, and you actually like DraftKings better. Why would you say that?
I've only used DraftKings. I've never used FanDuel. So
okay.
Yeah, I can't speak from a comparative perspective.
All right, well, I was trying to put some more crow into his mouth anyway. So then move over to FanDuel, to my team. I've gone ahead and gone with Nick Foles here. I think this is a team that knows the Washington Redskins, and the Washington Redskins defense, pass defense, is a very weak lineup. So I think this is a great matchup for him at $6,500. That gives you a chance to really afford some other players. I too like Lamar Miller, and I'm going with the rookie Amir Abdullah. I think if Carlos Hyde can come out and have a big game against the 49ers, against the Minnesota Vikings, I think Amir Abdullah can as well. Terrence Williams is kind of the go-to guy there now that Dez is out. If anybody can pass through for 300 yards against Philadelphia, so he should have a pretty good matchup there. Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, I love those two picks. Those guys will both give me 20-plus points, which is really what I want to try to get from every skill position is 20 points. And then Jason Witten, again, for the same reasons, he's going to be the top target there, especially in the red zone for Dallas against Philadelphia. And those guys should be able to pile up some points high. I'm going to go on a little bit of a flyer here with Hawker, and I think that he's going to end up being a good kicker for the Saints. He certainly had a couple of good field goals last weekend. And then the St. Louis Rams defense against Washington. I mean, any defense against the Redskins is a good one to start. And again, for more information on more lineups, more lineup questions, and more all the data you can handle that we can get up there, go to FanDuelFootballPicks.com, and we'll keep you posted right there. Quick pick time for the Survivor Grid of the week. I picked that last week was Denver. They kind of squeezed one out. If you're still alive in Survivor, which I think maybe 10-15% of the league's people in my league last week got knocked out. I think the pick this week, and I don't like to take divisional matchups, is going to be the Saints against Tampa Bay. I'm reluctant to take it. I don't like doing it, but I don't really see a choice. I don't see the Saints with really any good favorable matchups there until Week 16 against Jacksonville. I wanted to use the Colts against the Jets, but they still have so many easy games against Jacksonville and Tampa Bay later on in the season. And look at the rest of the matchups there. I mean, they're not really that ideal. A lot of road games, which I would rather avoid than a divisional matchup. So I don't really see anything there that I would really want to gamble on, really. So I'm going with the obvious favorite, the Saints over Tampa Bay. I expect almost everybody else to do the same. So if you want to try to beat the odds and hope that Tampa Bay beats the Saints, this is a great way to do it. And I'm not going to do it, but I think a lot of if other people want to, that's a good way to try to make some money and create some separation.
I also think St. Louis over Washington's also a good pick.
Oh, man. St. Louis over Washington. A dome team on the road, man.
Yep.
I don't know about it.
But the thing about a defense is it travels well, and St. Louis has one of the most dominant defenses in the NFL.
And I do think they'll blow them out, too. I mean, Nick Foles is going to want to carve those guys up. All right, buddy, on to the matchups for this week. This is what we've been waiting for. There's about Some tasty matchups again. You see, there's some really great games, but Thursday night we got Denver and Peyton Manning looked like an old man. He could barely complete a pass on Sunday. Is that going to change against division rival Kansas City this week?
Yeah, that's going to change. Denver, man, it was a rough day for Peyton Manning. Definitely didn't look like the Peyton Manning of old.
Terrible.
But look for him to rebound. That he's got all the weapons. They will turn it around, and they'll get that offensive line worked out to where maybe he can get an extra 30 seconds or an extra couple seconds more to try to get the ball off.
I don't know what to make of that, but Kansas City certainly did look impressive last week.
Kansas City's not going to make it easy on them, and that's for sure. But there's just too many athletes on the Denver side. And Denver's defense, and you kind of see this every once in a while. You see a team transition from the previous year where, Denver, they had a tremendous offense last year. They were racking up points, yards, touchdowns all over the place. But they didn't make it to the Super Bowl, did they? And why? Because of their defense.
Because of Peyton Manning.
Yeah, well, that too. But
what happened to your boy C.J. Anderson then?
I don't like C.J. Anderson. Never liked C.J. Anderson. Never drafted him in anything.
Obviously he's going to be a bust, just like we predicted on the show. C.J. Anderson, you should never take a guy like that in the first round of any of your drafts, period.
I drafted Monty Ball last year, so I learned my lesson with
Denver running backs. Pick him up on the waiver wire week 8. So Detroit, Minnesota. What happened to Minnesota on Monday night, and can they rebound this week against Detroit?
They fell apart. There was all kinds of optimism about Minnesota coming out. All kinds of expectations.
I had him picked in the Super Bowl.
Man, San Francisco just owned them. It's not going to get better at Detroit. Detroit's defense is one of the top defenses in the league. And unless they can get Adrian Peterson started early and alleviate some of the pressure on their passing game, look for another long day.
Imagine that. I mean, hopefully Minnesota can get things back on track here so they can keep making it to the Super Bowl like I predicted, but it doesn't look good right now.
No, but that can all change.
Arizona, Chicago, and this looks like it's going to be a fairly one-sided game. I think Arizona's going to be the pretty big favorite in this game, but Chicago they can match up well against that defense.
You never know. Home field opener for Chicago. They've got some pride on the line, so I don't expect them to beat Arizona, though.
Are you afraid of starting the Matt Fortes or?
I think Matt Forte is a great start. I don't see how you could argue against starting Matt Forte any week.
Okay, so Arizona doesn't have a lot of exciting players except for maybe Carson Palmer and John Brown.
Carson Palmer, John Brown. It goes back to possessions receiver with Larry Fitzgerald, and David Johnson might be a good flyer.
Yeah. If you could pick a guy up the waiver wire, there you go. Go for it. Tennessee and Cleveland. This is always a fierce divisional battle here.
Cleveland. We will not lose for the rest of the season. How about that prediction?
Mariota is coming for you.
Man, I hate to say it, but Tennessee with Mariota at the helm, it might be a rough day for Cleveland unless we can get our running game started.
If the Jets are a rough game for Cleveland, I would think that Tennessee could be.
Yeah, well, I consider the Jets a better team than Tennessee. Tennessee's still unproven, but as we've seen numerous times, teams go the way of the quarterback. So if your quarterback is struggling, your team's going to struggle. Mariota played well, Tennessee won. Manziel did not, Cleveland lost.
All right, Buffalo, the sort of the surprise win over the Colts, dominating win over the Colts. Can they come in and dominate New England like that?
I don't think they can come in and dominate, but I think it's going to be a pretty good matchup. That's actually the 1 o'clock game that I will not be missing.
Okay. Well, that's certainly an ideal matchup between two teams that know each other very well, and anything can happen in that game. Houston and Carolina. Cam Newton against the very disappointing last weekend Houston Texans.
Yes. Who are they going to have at quarterback? That's the question.
Is there anybody in this game fantasy-wise that you want to start?
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, DeAndre's a good pick.
They get the ball in his hands, he can break it at any moment. Other than that,
I think I even saw Jonathan Stewart was nursing something. I got Jonathan Stewart on every freaking team I drafted.
I mean, Alfred Blue just gave me the blues last week, so will not be dipping back into that well.
They might be trying to rush Arian Foster back from his injury.
Yeah.
Okay, San Francisco and Pittsburgh. This is going to be the sort of the surprise 49ers against the Pittsburgh, who put up a better fight, I think, against New England than a lot of people expected.
Yeah, look for Carlos Hyde to have another big day running. If he can bring the same enthusiasm and leg drive that he brought this past weekend, Pittsburgh's defense is going to be in for a long day.
That would be something else. And Pittsburgh's still waiting to get Le'Veon Bell back one more week, and then they'll be probably back into their battle rhythm there.
I think this game might have some scoring fireworks.
Well, I think the next game could have some scoring fireworks too. San Diego and Cincinnati. These are two quarterbacks that can kind of get after it when they're in the right mindset. And boy, Keenan Allen coming off that big game. And is he going to outshine A.J. Green in this game?
I think Keenan Allen has the better quarterback, and that's getting the ball to the wide receiver. That's the hard part. So I think Keenan Allen will outmatch A.J. Green.
Keenan Allen had 15-plus catches in that game, and that's pretty darn impressive. Okay, St. Louis and Washington. This is a game that not a lot of people here at DC are going to care about because St. Louis didn't come in there and probably bully these guys all over the place.
Sell your tickets.
Foles, anybody else on the Rams?
The Rams, you can never tell with their wide receiver group. You've got Nate Washington, you've got Givens, and Nate Washington had over 100 yards, right? Is he with?
Probably. He had a couple good
he
catches.
did.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some other big games here on the docket here. I know there's the big Dallas and Philadelphia game. This is going to be a fantasy feast for just about any of the players you have on either of those two teams. Are you going to stay away from any of the Dallas players now with their running back situation, and now that Dez is out, are they going to start to struggle offensively?
No, I really like your pickup of Terrence Williams in your FanDuel.
Great.
Terrence Williams, I think that he's definitely going to pick up some of that slack left by the Dez Bryant injury, and look for Dallas to try to reinvigorate their running game. I don't expect that to happen. I think they made a big mistake getting rid of DeMarco Murray.
But Nate also likes my Alfred Blue pick too. But hopefully that was a 1 week kind of deal. So lastly, let's one more game to look at here is Seattle and Green Bay. This is a big game. This is a rematch of one of the NFC playoff games last year. And do you see a different outcome? Is Green Bay going to finally get past the Seattle hurdle, but they just can't seem to get past it?
It's at Green Bay. Great home field advantage in Green Bay.
I think they always play them at Green Bay. It doesn't seem fair that they never play them in Seattle.
Really?
Those games are always in Green Bay. Always the Hail Mary, the catch, all that crazy stuff. Wasn't the Golden Tate catch, I think it was?
I think we can see some more fireworks this weekend. Really looking forward to that game as well. I'm glad it's on a primetime slot.
All right, buddy. Where can all the viewers Twitter us and ask us their questions?
Hit us up at Nate FSR TV. We want your questions.
And if you can't figure out how to do Twitter like I can't, then go to our Facebook page at fantasysportsreview.com. Thank you, Steve Mullen, for directing this evening. For Fantasy Sports Review, I'm Phil Hargis. This is Nate. Have a good week, everybody.
See ya.